Good morning and welcome everybody to session 32 of our verse-by-verse study through the book of Genesis here in the virtual life Bible study at City on the Hill. My name is Pastor Derrick. Welcome in. Glad that you are here with us. We've got a lot to cover today, so we're going to go ahead and jump right in. We're in Genesis chapter 40, verses 1 through 23. And this is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, one that I think is very misunderstood by a lot of people, one that I hope will really bless you as you study it. The story today picks up from where we were last week. And if you remember, Joseph was in Potiphar's home. He was he was blessed by God and given great success with everything he was doing. Potiphar saw that and made him manager over his home. Joseph was easy on the eyes, and so Miss Potiphar began making some sexual advances towards him, which ended up culminating in her pulling his robe off or his outer garment off as he was running off and then accusing him of essentially sexually assaulting her, which landed him in prison. Of course, this was not true. He did not. He was doing the right thing. She lies to cover up what is going on, or maybe her ego was bruised, or I'm not really sure. It doesn't tell us. But either way, he ends up in prison. But he is still given blessing even in prison. The prison keeper, he finds favor in his eyes and is made in charge over basically everything in the prison, which is really an interesting last detail. And then we get to chapter 40. And in chapter 40, we come to a scenario where dreams become the topic of discussion. The cupbearer and the baker are both thrown into prison, and both of them have dreams, and both of them are asked to, or both of them ask Joseph rather to interpret these dreams. And we find out in chapter 40 that Joseph has a proclivity towards interpreting dreams. We're not really sure why, but there's a few things that I want to say about this up front that are kind of interesting here. This is the first time where dreams are being used in a very different way than they are in the rest of Genesis. So for example, Genesis 15:1, the word of Yahweh came to Abram in a vision. Okay, this is a dream or a vision. We're not really sure if he was asleep or not, but it seems like a very dream-like status. Genesis 20 verse 3, God comes to Abimelech in a dream. Jacob's strange breeding procedure, if you remember that from several months ago when we were back in that part of Genesis, and it was in Genesis 30, those were revealed to him by God in a dream. That was in Genesis 31 where we find out about the dream part. Joseph's interaction with dreams are a little bit different. They diverge a little bit from the typical way we see dreams being utilized. And the reason why is, if you remember back in Genesis 37, Joseph has dreams regarding his superiority over his brothers and even his father, indicating that God is going to raise him up to do something really incredible, that they will bow down to him. Remember the stars and the moon. Both there and here, there is no mention of God. There's no mention that, in these other examples, it's like a word of Yahweh came to someone in a dream or in a vision. Here, it's just that Joseph has a dream. And so that's a subtle detail, but it's one that we need to pick up on, because what that means is not necessarily that this is not from God, but that this is not a specific message being sent to Joseph in the same way that it was being done in other parts of Genesis. And so we have to be, and the way that Joseph deals with it even is very different than how they were dealt with in earlier parts of Genesis. And this is it's going to inform us a little bit, I think, about how dreams should be interpreted and dealt with today in our modern time. We do find him in the New Testament as well. Jesus' earthly father, Joseph, is also told by an angel in a dream that Mary was indeed pregnant through the Holy Spirit with the Son of God. He's later warned by God in a dream to flee Egypt to escape the wrath of Herod. In the book of Acts, Peter explains that in the last days, one of the things that will be evident of such a time is that old men will dream dreams. That's a quote actually from Joel chapter 2 as well. So there's lots of talk about dreams in both the Old and New Testaments. And so we're going to discuss how they play out in this passage, and then I think how they should play out today for us as well. For one, the cupbearer has a very different kind of dream than the baker. The cupbearer and the baker are thrown into prison. They're both a part of Pharaoh's household. And Joseph interprets both of their dreams. And I'm not going to go into all the details. Read the study guide, go through the actual text, you'll learn. But essentially, in a nutshell, the cupbearer's dream, Joseph interprets to mean that within 3 days, Pharaoh is going to execute judgment in favor of the cupbearer, and he'll be restored to his position. But the baker, on the other hand, in 3 days will be judged in a negative way, and in fact will die for it. He will be fed to the birds, basically. He's hanged by Pharaoh first, and then fed to the birds. Yeah, not a great outcome for the baker. The dreams, of course, come true. Everything unfolds exactly how Joseph says they will. And the end, the very last verse, verse 23, says, "Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him." Now, this is an important detail because while Joseph is dealing with the cupbearer, one of the things he tells him is, "Only remember me when you are brought back under the good graces of Pharaoh." So when Pharaoh executes judgment favorably and you are restored to your position, if you wouldn't mind, mention me to Pharaoh that I might be given a fair shot at getting out of prison as well. And yet at the end, the cupbearer, for one reason or another, forgets about him, and that's how the story ends. Now, of course, this is going to come up again when Pharaoh dreams dreams. The cupbearer is going to remember, oh, right, there's this guy in prison that knows how to interpret dreams, and that narrative is going to unfold. So that's sort of setting us up for that. But everything happens exactly how Joseph says it will happen, and the baker is executed, the cupbearer is restored, and the story continues. Now, I want to say a little bit about this at the end here, and I want you to read the study guide, of course, as well. I have a note on the interpretation of dreams. My contention here is that this is something that is often overblown in churches, especially in more charismatic veins of Christianity. There are not many times that the word interpret is used in the New Testament. It's only used an additional 5 times, and 3 of those times it has to do with tongues. It means to evaluate or translate or explain. It can be translated in any of those ways. And then in 2 of the times, it is used with regard to weather. Jesus says, you know how to evaluate the weather, and yet you don't understand so on and so forth. To evaluate, to understand, to translate, but not in a language sense, but in looking at the sky and translating to people what is about to happen. You can see probably how those 2 kind of ideas are connected. Same word. We don't see that happening with dreams in the New Testament. And my take on this is that the need for the interpreter is actually unnecessary. Genesis 48 tells us that all interpretation belongs to God. That's what Joseph says. And the overwhelming majority of times that the dreams are used to communicate something of God in the Old Testament, it's clear to the dreamer what the meaning of the dream is. In fact, the only 2 times where it's not is in this example, and then in the example of Daniel with Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel chapter 2, where an outside interpreter is necessary. And both of those examples are dreams that are given to non-believers, which is another interesting detail. The cupbearer and the baker are clearly not Israelites that are followers of Yahweh, and yet a follower of Yahweh is given interpretation to those dreams. Same thing with Nebuchadnezzar and Daniel. So, case in point, all interpretation belongs to God, and my contention is that when dreams happen, the dreamer of the dream likely will be able to interpret that dream in the context of the church. With that being said, I have a note on the expectation of dreams, and that is that one should not expect for this to be the normative experience for Christian living. God chooses to reveal things to certain people, very specific people with very specific context through dreams in a very small handful of times. I mean, it's not a large number of times this happens in the entirety of Scripture. So we should not expect it to be something that is normative in the Christian experience. As we get to the end of days, when God begins to pour out His Spirit in these, ramping up close to the tribulation and the end, Old men will dream dreams, but young men will do other things, and other people will do other things, and still, it's not the normative experience. So all that to say, Paul doesn't deal with it in any of his letters. He doesn't encourage or write or correct about any of this to any of the churches. That says to me that it's a pretty minor issue. It's a pretty minor experience, and one that Paul didn't even see fit to discuss or address. So with that being said, here's what I would say to you. Does God sometimes communicate to us through dreams? I believe He does. I believe He has communicated to me through dreams on at least a couple of times that played out exactly how the dreams were given, and fruit was born from those. Lifelong friendships, fellowship with other believers has happened as a result of that. And so I'm inclined to think that God does sometimes communicate to us through dreams. With that being said, I believe that as a follower of Jesus, you will have the interpretation for that dream as well, if He so chooses to give you a dream. But that we should not expect that, and that we should seek to know Him and His will primarily through His Word, because that is how He's chosen to reveal Himself and what He expects out of us on a day in and day out basis. So, hope this study is interesting to you. Hope it challenges you. Hope that you learn something from it. It's certainly one of my favorite ones I've done. Our discussion this week is on kindness, which is so important for us to demonstrate as followers of Jesus. If you have any questions, as always, please do not hesitate to ask me. You can email me, you can call me, you can message me on Facebook. Whatever you want to do is fine. As always, the study guide is linked in the description below. I hope that this will be a great time, and I can't wait to hear from some of you regarding what you got out of it. God bless you. We will see you next time.